Welcome to October 2023. My name is Joey Ragona. How are you? It's Heart Centered Marketing. It's another episode. We're here in October 2023, like I just said, and we're getting into the winter months, the fall months here in Toronto. And, it was kind of funny because right now we're in a little bit of a chill mode, right? We're a little bit chillier than normal. But last week, we were kind of like sweltering. And that's kind of the way the up and down goes here in the Canadas and the Torontos. Man, how about you, bud? I know you're in Florida, so you don't have a lot of this fluctuation. But
No. We do have a lot of the fluctuation, but we don't have it like to the point where you guys have it. It's super cold and then super hot. We are getting nice and cool weather, and you know me, it's time to go out. I have my hibernation has stopped. Now I'm ready to go out, in which in fact I've been doing this past week. It's been like 50s and 60s Fahrenheit, so whatever
yeah,
that is for you guys.
I don't know I have no idea what that is. Yeah.
I think it's like 30s Celsius or something like crazy like that. I don't know.
Is it? No, it can't be that. That can't be that hot. But that's where it
Oh,
was
also
last week for us.
20s.
30 degrees, man. Like we were, like, it was hot.
Hot. Okay,
Yeah,
so
it was
they
like
maybe
really, really
high,
hot.
maybe mid 20s then for you guys.
Maybe, yeah.
Like cool weather, you know.
It's just uncanny. Like last week, I was telling my wife because she's like, it's going to be really. It was like great, nice weather, just kind of like what you're experiencing now. Was like just normal, nice weather, and
Yeah.
then and then a couple of days she goes, it's going to be really, really hot. And so the first day was like, okay, and then we were like, muggy. You know how it is, right? It's like it's really
Yeah.
hot, it's muggy, and all that.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we can deal with it. And then it went on for like 3 more days, and I'm like, because the first
Yeah.
day I go, should we turn the air conditioning on? And he's like, nah, we can deal with it. And by the third day, I'm like,
You're
oh
like,
my god. So we
stop
had like
it.
it was only a couple of days ago, and then all of a sudden today is like, yeah, we kind of got to put the heat on. So whatever, it's crazy.
I love it.
Anyway, let's get to this, my man. Eddie Sand
What's
is in
up?
the house,
Yeah, man.
by far one of my best friends in the world. And,
Thanks, man. Love
we
you.
are, this is going to be an epic discussion. I know it. I don't know how it's going to go,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I've already got my boxing gloves on because I know there's going to be a little bit of a, there might be a little bit of a challenge here just for anybody watching. So,
Oh
loving
yeah.
challenges going on here and there because we're going to be talking about persuasion today, persuasion and
Mm,
sales. And
mm.
dude, like, I've been looking forward to this because when you texted me and said, I think we want to talk about this, I'm like, okay, cool. And for anybody listening, right, we don't script anything out. It's just like, here's the topic. Let's kind of talk about this, and wherever it goes, it goes. And and then she texted me. I'm like, okay, cool. Just be ready for a challenge just in case, because I have no idea. But but what really intrigued me about this topic was I know that you're like this heart centered dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not
Yeah.
this boiler room sales guy.
Mm-hmm.
So with
Mm-hmm.
that in mind, I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna let you take it away and start the conversation. Let's go. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so I think the first thing we need to discuss, and we need to be very clear, is persuasion versus influence, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because you know that we are influential leaders, right? We become part of the situation to solve it, and so we don't push people.
Yeah.
But however, I do have to say that so persuasion is more direct, right? It's an active process,
Right.
and
Right.
it involves communication. It involves arguments or negotiations, if you want to call it, right? So that's but influence is more subtle, right?
Yes. Right.
It's more
Yeah.
indirect. It's more like the process that involves like shaping the tone of the conversation. So it's really interesting. Both, if you look at them, could accomplish the same thing. However, I'm here to talk with you about persuasion because I believe that is needed.
Okay.
I believe that in the sales world, whether it's a solopreneur, whether it's a sales team or individual, what they're missing is making the connections or the dots between the personal touch, that relationship that you can have a persuasive tone or persuasive conversation, do like a Jedi on them, but in a good way, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But what do you feel is persuasion for you?
Um, I've studied it and I continue to study it as a copywriter. Very persuasive writing, how to you know move the needle where I needed it to go by using language and all kinds of different certain things. Because influence happens, I believe, before the fact they get there to the persuasive argument or persuasive conversation, whatever it is. And you're right. Like I believe that persuasion is about a more direct approach during the
Hmm.
conversation or reading whatever it is. Yeah, so that I'll stop there. I believe, at this point, if you ask me, do you persuade people? I do not. I no longer persuade people. It was I leave it alone for them to, if you want to really reverse it, for them to persuade themselves,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
don't use a direct approach anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so again, pretty much it's either direct or indirect, right? Persuasion is direct, influence is indirect. However, there is an art to persuasion too,
Mm-hmm.
because you have the ability when you have a conversation that is persuasive, you have the ability to influence somebody's behavior for the good,
Can you
right?
give
So
me an
it's
example
really,
of a persuasive?
yeah. Yeah. So, for example, let's say for me, I use a lot the consultative approach, and I rarely do the salesperson, like the hard closing the deal kind of thing. I don't like to do that, but I do a lot of the consultative with a mix of negotiation. Okay, so here's an example. So let's say I'm listening, so everything deals with listening, right? So I already listened, I already taken the notes, I know exactly, and I am clear on the pain point or the frustration that this individual in their company have. So I'm very clear now about that. This is where the persuasive approach comes in, or the consultative type. What I do is I basically become their go-to expert leader in the industry by giving them a very general solution to one of their challenge, right? So
Okay.
I don't go up and say, oh, I've got what you need, we've got what you need, and it's service number A, and I don't do that. I basically help them. I give them the value that my experience, and I give it to them. So when you do this right, when you really are doing it in a genuine way, you usually hear that person say, oh, you know what? I haven't heard it before. Or, oh, that's why we're having this issue. Or, oh, that's interesting. This is something that we can actually put into place. You start wowing them because you know your stuff. So that's persuasion, because now what they don't know behind the scenes is that I'm doing that because not only am I an expert in that industry, but I'm also looking and hearing the response. How can I now tie or bridge their challenge with the quick values that I've given them into the solution that I have? So that becomes my full focus, right? So now my persuasive approach as a consultative, is that this call can go either way. You don't like me, but you've got value, or we like each other and we're going to continue the conversation to see how we can actually support you with your challenge. Either way, that's the goal, right? That's We are both making those decisions, but that takes persuasion approach. Negotiation, that's a different one, right? That the different ones is based on their needs. I mean, I can't I can't go up and tell a company, that does lacks sales a sales team. Let's just say a sales team. They have the sales process, but they don't have a sales team. Well, I can't go up to the owner or the decision maker and say, okay, yeah, this is the program A is practically improving and increasing your sales. So let's go ahead and get you started with that. But what about the sales team? Like they don't have that. So I need to negotiate a way to say, okay, listen, you obviously you can do this. However, my experience is that having at least another person or two based on the company and the goals that you want will be really good right now to add this into the mix. So I'm going to kind of lead you into this because if you just get this one tool, is you're still gonna need help with that. So I have to negotiate, right? Like I have to see, okay, what are they saying? How are they physically responding? What's their tone, right? I need to start the negotiations without saying let's negotiate. you know?
Right, right, right. Okay. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think we're all doing some kind of form of it all, depending on how we approach it. And what comes to mind when I'm hearing what you just said is that there's the goal of making something happen from that conversation. Am I mistaken on that, or
Yeah. So the once we enter into this conversation, first of all, again, right? So it's really interesting how we're going to talk about almost the end of this sales conversation, but it has to be positioned the right way. So that means that you are very good at this. You have a pre-qualification process even before you take that extra step into taking it serious, right? Taking that second or third level of let's have this conversation now.
right,
So
right,
so we have to have all that. So by the time we're doing this persuasion, in a way, it's you're guiding the decision that you know is best for them because you already see that you can help them. So yes, there is an ultimate goal. You have to know your stuff and you have to know what it is that you're selling, but don't be that guy that says, okay, Eddie, well, at the end of the conversation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present to you our services and I'm going
right.
to see and I'm going to show you which one I feel you fit. And you make the decision at that. I'm like, what the heck? We haven't even started talking, dude. Like, well, you know, right? Don't be that guy.
But
But
the goal
you
there
do,
is that you
Joey.
do still want to get a
Yes.
sale, or
You
them
still,
decide
absolutely.
I don't like you, and
Eh,
they exit the conversation. Is that right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, because
Okay.
it's very direct. Remember,
When
so
do you
let's
know
get to that point.
when do you know, or how do you know when somebody doesn't like you, that you would not move into more of a persuasive conversation?
They usually in that conversation, in that piece of listening, when I get clear about where it is that they're at and what it is that they need and how I can serve them. When I get to that point where I'm showing them, presenting, doing that presentation, presenting to them in a conversational way what we have done with our clients and what we are capable to do in the industry without saying that we can do this for you is how they respond. Are they leaning forward and saying, "Hmm, tell me more about that," or are they basically at, by the time you finish one or two pieces of your presentation, are they basically asking you a bunch of questions that they're all about is, okay, well, how much does this cost? And that don't make sense because they just start attacking you with all these detailed questions. Like that's when you know there's something going on. And check this out. I feel that when you learn to persuade the right way, then you actually have control. You can balance and meet them where they're at. So let's say an example, I told you I use a lot the consultative. That's my favorite, it's a consultant. Negotiation, I like that because I want to make sure that they feel confident in the decision they're about to make. So I need to negotiate whether it's time, not reduce the price. That's not negotiation. But negotiation is, time frame, or how much do they really need or not. Just really be very legitimate, like caring about what they need. But then we have the authority guy, right? Like the I call them the authority, like the person who is basically, look, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Right? I mean, that's another approach of persuasion. And then we also have the salesy pitchy, which hopefully no one uses this, but we have those at least four different approaches. So if you get to that point where this person is mission driven, it's the leader, it's the A type, it's like, let's get to the point. Well, guess what? You started consultative, you better be getting to the point with the authority that you are the expert. And you're going to have to give them some quick overview on the big numbers of what the benefits are or what the results will be. And then move on to, okay, this is what I see. Right. So you have to meet them where they're at. But that's the
Yeah.
power of persuasion. I feel, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about this today, because I feel that there is a time and a place to use what I call the force, yeah, to be able to use that to your advantage, but understand, be very clear, not only how to use it, but also to who you're going to use it. Because can you imagine, Joey, if I go to someone who is a complete, they are fed up with what they've done, they don't trust the process anymore. They're just here because they want to feel better. And I show up like a negotiator right away,
Yeah. Right.
or right? Or I show
Right.
up like a salesy pitch again. Oh, here comes the sales pitch. Boy, your persuasion is like completely off track. And that's where it can go very wrong, right?
Yeah. And to the context of what we're talking about here, and by the way, if you hear hashtag live, let us know, hashtag live or hashtag replay. Just wanted to say, I don't know who that was who said hi first, because you didn't get your name there, but if you do want to give us permission to see your name and we can broadcast it, just hit the notice in, if you're watching in the Facebook group. I think that's the only place you can do that, just to give Ecamm permission so he can give you some props. But hi, whoever you are. I think that for the context of this, it's like the markets that we deal with are slightly different. And you correct me if I'm wrong, because
Yeah.
you're
Okay.
dealing with a lot of salespeople and their goal is to make sales, right? I mean, you're teaching
Mhm.
people how to build their sales teams and how to be persuasive in a nice way and all that kind of stuff, not the boiler room type of stuff, right?
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
on my end of it, even though I do want sales and all that, like that, you can't have a business without having sales, but the result of me getting on a call, let's just use a call as the context of everything. Forget, doesn't
Yeah.
matter how the conversation goes, but
Yeah. Yeah.
for this, we'll just use the call. That those calls are no longer, the result of that call is not to make someone buy from me. So I don't go in as a sales conversation. It's always about a supportive conversation. And so
But do you have objections? Do you get some sort of objections in those calls?
it's rare.
Hmm.
It's rare. But like even yesterday, I think it was yesterday. I can't believe it's only Tuesday because I had a long day yesterday, a lot of calls. And so yesterday I had more questions slash objections, if you want to call them that,
Okay.
than
Yeah. Yeah.
than I've
Customer
had in a long,
concerns.
long time. Yeah, not
Yeah.
a yeah. It was just like, and so I felt more. Yeah, it was more of like just answering the question and not
Hmm.
leading them to make a decision, because I
Hmm.
could have easily just went into more of a persuasive tone, but it was like,
Hmm.
here's the thing here, let me just answer the question. So I'm always going into a conversation
Yeah.
to support their question and to leave everything up to them, because that's my pillar number 3 is respect their
Right.
timeline. And I get it that a sales team really can't operate like that. They're like, no, dude, we gotta.
Well, no, no, no. Okay. So you're right. An average sales team, they will not operate that way. They have to be meeting their quota and all
Yeah.
this stuff. However, when I walk in, it is required to what you just said, which is learn to leave the deal at the table.
Okay.
Okay, because even though, because see, you're doing it too, Joey. So you're basically answering questions that's something in your client's head, that whatever conversation you just had, you have to still answer them. But yeah, of course, you're not going to push them. Oh, you got to buy now, or I know you, because you don't do that. However, just by your answer, you're persuading them to choose,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
so again, you're still using that power. It's just that you learn, there's you, the way you approach the conversation, but also who are you talking with? Because I also remember, Joey, you've had conversations where people were, man, it just felt like, whoa, like you're not fit for me. But you kind of didn't even tell them right there, but you were digging, right? You were kind of answering those questions, but you already knew, like, no, I can't work with you, right?
Yeah, like those are definitely the conversations where I'm trying to get off the calls as fast as possible, or without out of the conversation as fast as possible, without being a jerk about it. But yeah, it's like there. I remember one. There was only one that I could really bring to the top of my head right now that almost gone to that point very quickly, which
Mhm.
was like, dude, just shut up. Like I'm getting off this call. Like, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was almost to that point where I just wanted to just unleash everything, because it was just I felt like I was under attack, like from the
Okay.
moment it started. And this person wasn't even, yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter the details, but
Well,
yeah.
well, what? Check that out. What you just said. This is the power of persuasion. Because now, if you know that, you can then show up and shift the tone. Whatever you started with, you can shift immediately and become the expert. The hey, do it my way
But
or the
that's if I wanted
highway.
to get the sale, but I didn't want that person. I didn't
Yeah,
want to
but
deal
you're
with that
still.
person.
Yeah, because you still, even though you're selling a product, a service, you're selling a service, you're selling a service. So even though you're selling a service and they're interested, well, at least they're interested because they're asking all these questions. So whether they're going to make the choice or not is up to them, but they're not ready to commit, right? So you come in and you start to persuade that conversation and their response into, this is not it. This is not for you, right? So you start to move that in that direction. So an example, this is a cool
Yeah.
one right here.
Okay.
So here's the example. Right? Let's say the guy is asking all this question, all the details. So pretty much you decided already you don't want to work with them.
Right.
So you can immediately become the authoritative, of your industry, of what you do, and just basically come up with some ridiculous amount of numbers and a ridiculous amount of time frame, and say, look, listen, for what you're asking, we that all the details that you're asking and wanting, those are the onboarding details. This is when you pay me already the $20,000 for the program, so that way we can change and transform you and your business. So if you're ready to have that conversation, let's go ahead and move on. 20,000 what? You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like
Okay.
something ridiculous. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
okay. So, but just let me be devil's advocate. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
let's say that the person says, "Yeah, okay, cool. Let's do that." All right.
So now you have a pre-qualification process. Okay, good.
Okay.
This is the
So even
onboarding
though so the money
because you
doesn't
said
matter. Yeah.
money doesn't matter. The onboarding, you said onboard. I call it onboarding. You can call it whatever, a pre-qualification before you get in, because you're keeping your community safe, right? But whatever that is, you have to give them that wall so that they can climb it. And what you're doing reminds me of boot camp, man. I just picture boot camp right now. They used to do this all the time, and it was so crazy back then. But looking back, I'm thinking, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to be that is the slide for life. That's what they call it, the slide for life. Imagine this like a bungee jump tower with a very thick 12, 20-inch thick rope. Okay, so it's not that thick, but it's thick enough that you can supposedly slide down, and at the bottom, you have this pond, this swamp, really. It's not even a pond, it's a swamp. It's pitch dark, and it's not a pretty pool, okay? So it's freaky, okay? Because we don't know how deep it is, and no one tells us that stuff. And so what the guy is telling us, the drill instructor is saying, hey, get in, cross over your leg, stay on top, and slide down. Well, on top, everybody flipped. Now, behind the scenes, they knew that. Like, there's no way you can actually stay up because the rope is not that tight either. What they were doing is they were getting our fear out of holding onto something pretty high and diving into, maybe there's gators down there or something. We don't know, right? But it reminds me of that, because even though they're saying, go get up, do it this way, do it that way, do it this way, the end is they still have control. And they can tell you, you fell, let go, just let go, you're a quitter, let go, do it again, right? so so you can have something like that, not to that extent, but you can have an onboarding process that is a very unique and very how can I say, very precise, right? Where you are picking and choosing who's going to go through. Oh, by the way, if you don't qualify, we'll go ahead and give you your money back, whatever, right?
Yeah. I think like in the process of when I want to, in that case, I'm just talking about that one thing, because it doesn't happen very much, where the person is just not a fit and my whole insides is just going
I've had
crazy,
that. Yeah.
And but in that case, it was like I'm just right up front and say, I am not the right person for you. This is not what I do. What you're asking for is not where my expertise is. So I don't know if that's really taking an authoritative position. It's more of backing out and just saying, I'm not the right person for you. And I remember that person says, why not? What can you do for me? And then I had to think fast, because it was more of, I already knew the type of person that he was. And he was just basically money driven. Right.
Yeah.
And so I elected to go to, which is it's not lying. It was just, I emphasized more and more and more about the heart-centeredness, about all the stuff that would be that I knew would be completely opposite of what he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that helped me, I guess, prove that I wasn't the right person for that person. So
Yeah,
I was,
right.
maybe I was persuading, maybe that was a persuasion of
That
getting,
was that was a
just
persuasion.
leave. Right. So
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, it was an indirect type of persuasion. So you kind of did that, absolutely. But going back to what you were saying, because, for example, when I'm talking about persuasion, you really have to be on your toes, right? Like, you have to be super present, because you can shift at moments time wherever the conversation leads you. But for you, what you're doing is they already know a lot of the things, isn't it? Right? Like, they already.
Yeah, and that's where it screwed me up, Eddie, because I was too much in my head before, as you know, because I was struggling with all of that. And even though I know persuasion and influence and NLP stuff and all that, like, it was always in my head of trying to go into the database to research and think, okay, what am I doing? And I really wasn't present, and I didn't want to have to focus on that. So when I stepped back out and just said, you know what, I'm just gonna just show up and answer questions, or wherever it goes,
Yeah.
it goes. Like, for me, it was just easier. So I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
right; it's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
But that's how and then that led me to making sales, because there
Mhm.
was no, I guess, there was no active persuasion
Mm.
for them to really feel it if I was persuading. But
Right.
because sometimes you can feel active persuasion, like
Yeah.
you can hear someone switch
Oh
over
yeah.
to the thing or whatever, and you're like, oh,
Oh
here we
yeah.
go, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They start asking you the questions, the pitch, right? They
Yeah,
start
yeah, yeah.
basically trying to put their pitch and combine it with what you're saying. And boy, that will like fail so rapidly, because first remember that the stats are showing now over 80% or so consumers are super knowledgeable before talking with you. So when you get to that pitching point, which you should first of all personalize the whole conversation, but when you get to that pitching point, it's the worst thing to basically have a generic sales pitch and then
Right.
try to make it fit to what they just told you. It's like, and we don't do pitches. I say I call them conversations. This is where you are awesome at this too, because what you have done is you've moved away from the persuasive tactics, right?
Yeah. Tactics is a
Into
good word to use. Yeah.
yeah, into the influential matters, right? Like you are
Right.
an influencer in their lives, and so it makes sense. What you do is excellent. Is you just answering questions, and it's almost like a matter of fact kind of thing. Like, okay, you're here. If you want, good. If not, good. I mean, I'll be as much help to you as possible. Well, with a persuasion approach, if you don't even have a heart to help, and you're not putting together the active listening to put together that conversation, that presentation that you're about to give them because they want to hear more, if you don't master that or practice that, boy, it's hard to do any type of persuasion, because now you sound like a salesperson.
Mm.
You're
Yeah,
just
and then
pitching.
'cause you also said something there too that I want to ask about. So, like you're saying, you know, asking the right questions or be an active listener to what they're saying and all this, so that you can give them the presentation. And that's the point.
Yeah,
Whereas I'm not looking at a presentation per se. Like
right,
I'm not going in
right.
there with a model or something that I want to sell them, even though
Hmm.
it's like, okay, I got Atlas and that's pretty much everything I have. And if they
Yeah,
ask about like how do you help somebody, I'll tell them, well, this is kind of what I do.
yeah,
But there's no like presentation that I have
yeah.
to kind of move over into. So that's the reason. That's where
Wait,
I think it differs.
but you do have a presentation. I mean, tell us how it is that you have those conversations before they see all the information and get on the call with you.
What do you mean? Are you talking about
So
the message navigator?
yeah, the message navigator, right? That's your presentation.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, I don't know, man, because like I guess the message navigator is like a framework. It's kind of a
Hmm.
it's kind of a prompt of what I want. It is my filtering questions. That's what it really is. It's more of a filtering
Yeah,
question. So, is this the right person that I want to speak to? And am I persuading? I guess it depends on how you want to look at the word, but it's more of I'm filtering them out, and then let's say that it works. Or let's say that they go through some of the questions and they're having a conversation, and they say, "I I would love to know more about how you can help me because I'm struggling with this thing." At that point, like I don't persuade. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's in my case, I just send them to a Google Doc, right? It's like that's fine,
exactly.
and I've already accepted that they're somebody that I want to have in the tribe, and then I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
cool, go see this, and then they do that, and then that's it. It's over. It's everything is in their court. Like there's no follow up. There's no, hey man, how's it? What did you think? Like, okay, I'm lying. There might be one or two afterwards of depending on how that conversation went. If it was a really long conversation, I might
Yeah.
send another message or say, is there anything that I kind of missed that I didn't
Hmm.
answer that you want to know more about? That's it. But it's more about giving them the power. Like I give everything to them.
Yeah.
And I don't have any of the power. Like it's all you, man. It's all good. Like I
Yeah.
had actually yesterday I had somebody that I sent the doc to. Like we were having a long conversation and they
Hmm.
said, and then I got to the point where, sometimes I will be really direct because there's a point where in the conversation you kind of know that they're just struggling with stuff, or they're saying, yeah, I'm going to have to go and do this or do that. And
Hmm.
sometimes, which is not every time, but this is where a lot of people get messed up because they'll hear stuff like what I'm about to say and then they'll just use that all the time and it doesn't work. But in this
Yeah.
yesterday's conversation, I said, do you want some help with that thing, like what I just said, right? Like it was a
Right.
direct question. Do you want some help
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah.
And and then so anybody listening to this, like, yes, that's what I asked to transfer over to the sale or whatever to give them the
Hmm.
thing. But then
Yeah.
if somebody's hearing that, they're like, oh, that's the question. Like, do da da da, and then do you want some help with that? But no, that's
Get
not what
to
I'm
that.
saying.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not what I'm saying. In this case, it was because I believe that I'm an intuitive person, that I can feel what I can say and what I can't say in a conversation. I'm not 100% right, but I'm pretty close all the time. So anyway, the point of the story is that he said yes, and I'm like, cool, here, just go read this and let me know. And if there's any questions you have. And right
Yeah.
away he said like, okay, cool, I'm just going to, I'm going to read through it and I'll kind of let you know. And I'm like, don't worry about this. It's like,
Yeah.
there's no
But
pressure here whatsoever. It's all good. Just
yeah,
take your
but
time.
what you're doing is a present. Actually, you are presenting your belief in what you do,
Yeah.
and you're communicating. You're doing it in a conversational way. You're
Mm-hmm.
answering questions to lead them to the Google Doc.
Yeah, I guess because the Google Doc can be, I guess, construed as a presentation, if you want to call it
Yeah.
that, right?
So
Yeah.
so your chats or email messages for that matter,
Yeah.
these things are your persuasion tactics,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to answer with a in a way that you want them to either make up their mind and say no, or here's the Google Doc.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your approach. And I believe what's happening is that you're actually doing it the right way, because now with chat, for let's just say chat message, right? Whatever message you use, because it's quick, right? So I'm sure you're going to be having multiple ones. Let's just say, well, you can use persuasive techniques. Let's call them techniques, and like building rapport, right? Because I know part of your nav is to do that, right? And
Yeah.
and then you start through your nav, you start asking questions. You want us to ask specific, some general, but specifically be directed to that question. And then you also want us to be emotionally attached, like be real, be genuine. Don't just be a bot and sell to the
Yeah.
next thing,
Yeah.
right? So you want us to have a conversation. So we're using emotion based language
Mm-hmm.
to get to that point where we then present them to what we ultimately want, which is for you that Google Doc.
Yeah. I mean,
You're a master at that, man. I'm
there.
telling you that,
Thank you, man. I mean, there's definitely some truth to that, and yeah,
right?
that is, yeah, like the way that I look at this is that even though the navigator is there as a framework or whatever you want to call it, template, this and that, it's for me, it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's like it is a filter. It's a filtering process more than it is anything else before I get to anything. And so that's what I'm always doing, is I'm always interviewing somebody first and saying, can I help them? First of all, I mean, that's what I'm thinking, is like, depending on where they are, can I help them? Because to me, it's like if they ask a question, like, yeah, like I'm kind of doing a sorting question, like a segmenting question, like what does this look like, or what are you wanting to do, this and that kind of thing. And if they're telling me, I don't know, just make it up, you know, I make $100,000 in sales a month, and I want to scale everything with Facebook. I'm like, that's not what I do. Like, it would be a crazy conversation for me to continue that conversation, right? So
Yes.
like I cut it off. I'm like, I could probably move you to somebody else, and that's not really what I do. Or a better example of this might be, well, I want to do like one-on-one coaching, and I want to expand that up. And I'm like, cool, that's great. But what I really focus on is the getting people out of one-on-one coaching. That's what most people come to me for. And I could probably give you some tips on marketing or talking or this and that, but I'm probably not the guy to help you with that either. Right. So I'm already right away,
Yeah.
knowing that, yes, I could probably help a one-on-one coach. I could probably help somebody who wants to do an
Hmm.
evergreen course or all these other kind of things. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stick
Hmm.
to like where my lane really, really is. And
Hmm.
so I'm
Yeah.
pulling myself out of the conversation. So that those questions are more of a filter,
Yeah.
just so I don't waste their time and my
Yeah.
time. You know,
Yeah. Joey. It's a framework. I
it,
I
yeah,
am I am right now. You are convincing me. You are persuading me to believe what you have
yeah.
is a persuasive framework. You do have a very persuasive framework, Joey, because so it compared, we're talking about, can you do a script? Do you have to have something? No, no, you cannot, because then you're completely not genuine, right? You're missing the point. But do you need a framework? Do you need a way to keep you focused on key points, for example, or to stay organized, to have multiple conversations and to stay organized? Okay, where are they at in this phase? So your persuasive skills are through the roof because you don't even know you're doing persuasion. You think you're influencing. I don't know why you're thinking that. but see, to that point, okay? Now, so you have a framework. It is to keep you on top, on point, to guide you along that conversation so that you don't miss
Yes.
points, right? Okay. Well, for me, I use a framework. Some professionals may see it as a script, and I always tell them, look, don't copy the script. Make it yours, but understand the phases. So there's four phases that I go by, right? But understand what you're doing. I said, even if you don't remember the details on each phase, just know from what phase to another, when is the time that you start moving in that direction, right? Because again, that helps them to stay on point. That helps anyone to follow through to the ultimate goal, which is to either enroll them right there and then or continue the conversation.
Okay, so I like that. I like those two outputs better rather than like, I mean, that's what, because if the enrollment happens like on my side or somebody wants to buy right then and there, which rarely happens, by the way, for me,
Mhm.
it's amazing. But where I am against the persuasive stuff
Mhm.
is when people are like doing everything and anything to get that sale right then and there, no matter what, and using persuasive tactics and all that other stuff to do it, which is not what you're talking about, by the way.
Right.
And so that's what I'm against. And so when I I guess it's like it's like childhood trauma, I guess, coming up when I hear the words persuasion and stuff, because I've tried to do it and I understand it and all these other things.
Yeah.
And I've had, and I'm pretty sure everybody listening to this has had someone try to persuasively get them to buy something when they really weren't sure, or they wanted to at least take some time to think about it or
Yeah.
whatever.
That's
So that's
that's
where,
called that's called manipulation,
yeah,
right?
you're
So
manipulating for sure.
yeah, so I think see, I'm telling you, man, it's like it's I've had this conversation this past last week, not this past week, this last week, because I was saying you need to learn the persuasion techniques. You need to learn that because you need to be aware of them. Because the fact is that every one of us we are being persuaded by someone or something, and we need to be aware of that. How do we use this in a better way, in a genuine way? But I think persuasion, like you said, there is that bad taste from past experience, and we think persuasion equals manipulation. There's that pushy, manipulative. They're not listening to you. They're not even tailoring anything. Like their approach is like you can tell they're practically, basically giving you this jargon words to look good, and right, like you need to buy from me because we're that good. That's old school. That's old school. And by the way, Joey, that it happens also in your world, in your mentoring, coaching services. It happens the same way. The difference is that you read it or you see it on videos, those posts or those ads, and they are practically doing that. They're
Oh
being
yeah,
persuasive in a way that it's manipulative. When you and I know when we go to a page and we know it's a sales page, right? So
that's right. That's right.
that's the difference. So I'm telling you, man, it's persuasion is a good thing. Being influencing others, I think that's more to me. That's more of a business to business person, taking the business into the personal world. For example, you are an influence in my world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't persuade me to do it because I know I haven't done a ton of things that you've said, but you influence me, right? So I think what's happening here is that yes, we can become influencers in our world to sell something, but I think you'll have a little bit better results if you're that's what you're looking for, if you learn that to use the force, right? Like what persuasive ways can you like how I'm doing this, by the way?
I do.
That's Jedi, right? That's
I do.
Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to learn that, right? And practice it and use it because it's to me is a little bit more effective. I think indirect communication, it's almost like going around in circles. It's like when you're ready, no, you're ready, you go, whatever. I don't know. That's what
Yeah.
I feel.
Like, and so that's kind of where it breaks for me because I don't want, I personally, you know, don't want to be thinking about anything on a call. That's because the outcome for me is not about the sale, even though it would be fantastic if a sale happens. But, like I spent all day yesterday, which pretty much was on quite a few calls, and none of those translated into really sales at all. Did I influence? Perhaps. Maybe those will come to sales 18 months from now, or maybe in the new year. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe there's some influence there. But that's how I approach it because I really don't want to be thinking. I'm always about like listening to what's going on in the conversation. And even though I might ask some of the same questions because I want to get a gauge for where they are, but those filtering questions, or I guess more digging questions, probing into like what's the real challenge here, then it just allows me to naturally persuade or influence, I guess. But it's mainly down the line because
Yeah.
I know there was a couple of points yesterday, Eddie, and because you can feel it, right? I
Yeah.
know that there was a couple of points at times and on a couple of calls where I could have easily persuaded, like actively persuaded,
Hmm.
and it probably would not have felt
Hmm.
that I'm trying to sell the person.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
just leave it.
Yeah,
Now,
you to me, what you just said, it's you're the teller. You're the expert. You are that person that you know your stuff, and
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't take crap from anybody anyway. So it's who you are, but you do it in a consultative way. You're
100%. It's
you're
it's
yeah,
consulting.
yeah,
I cross between the two, like, because I know that
yeah,
there's arguments of like, don't do all the talking. If you're doing more of the talking, then you're not doing the right job of the coaching and whatever it is. Right. But I have just found the fact that when people come to me, they're looking for guidance and help, and they're looking for answers, even though, you know, you don't give them all the answers, not because you don't want to, because you're not helping them. Because I know that it's better for someone to find the answers themselves and to help themselves sell themselves. Like that's what it's all about, really.
yeah, yeah.
And so that's what I do but I cross between the educator, the consultant, if you want to call it that, just answering questions or whatever,
Hmm.
and then the teacher, I suppose, whatever it is. And like,
Yeah, the
here's
expert.
an
So
idea.
yeah.
I don't know what you think
Hmm.
about this, but here's the way I see this. And so I'm moving between realms,
Hmm.
right? It's like, oh,
Hmm. Yeah,
he's taking this position, but I don't do it
yeah,
consciously. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Right. It
Where I
makes
used to
sense.
try to do that, and
Hmm.
that messed me
Right.
up
Right.
because it was
Right.
like, okay,
Eh,
let me go into persuasion now. Let me influence. Let me do this. Like, no, I don't do that because it would mess me up.
Yeah, because it'll mess you up. But you know how that happens? That happens by practicing.
Well, I maybe I think that I don't doubt the fact that all all the hundreds and hundreds of calls that I've had, it's not
That's
practice.
it.
It was
That
just
is
like
practice.
this is how I feel comfortable having the
Right.
conversation, which is
Yeah.
why I couldn't be a salesperson with quotas and all that kind of stuff. It would
Right.
just freak me out.
Right. Right. No, but that you have learned it, you have practiced it. There was always an intention, an ultimate goal, because I know, Joey, right? Fact is, you wanted people in your program.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
no reason why you wouldn't, you were talking with him for anything else but to get in the program. So you kept talking and talking. And remember, you and I, we've had conversations to where it was like one of those calls that, man, if I should have just said that instead or something, we've had, both of us, we've had that type of moment.
yes,
Those are
yes,
practices, right? We just get better and better. And then it becomes us. We put our heart into it and it just flows.
yeah,
So yeah, absolutely. That's the reason why there's no scripts. That's the reason there's a framework that you can use, but that is not to go by every single detail and waiting for when to do it, because absolutely you shouldn't even have a framework in front of you when you're having conversation. You should just know, be passionate about what you do, what you sell, like believe in it. That should be your number one goal, right? And be genuine, like really be there to support. When you combine those two things,
yeah,
it just naturally, you're naturally going to support them and they're going to see it. It just helps when you get to those points. So yeah, you kind of you I hear you kind of moving from the expert, right? The authority, the expert position, consultative, and you do some negotiation too. That I've heard that before with the program, where they're at, where you're at, what fits. So you're in there, which makes sense, because it will be a bad live stream today if I ever heard you be like a salesperson and be like, oh, I pushed them. Oh, I just closed that sale, man.
yeah, 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 yeah,
That would not
yeah,
be good. And
yeah.
then there's
And a
and
lot of
there's
times, it's funny because a lot of times when a sale happens for me or whatever on from a call or an email or a chat or whatever, I'm I'm usually surprised. I'm like, what? Right?
yeah.
Okay, okay, cool. Because I'm so used to it not happening like right away. And again, it doesn't. What I mean by right away, some
Mhm.
in my case, because I'm having conversations, it is that moment. But there could have been a billion conversations before that. But it's always in that moment that I'm like, what? Because it was like
Yes.
that was the conversation that actually did it, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it could be
Yeah,
the
that makes
first
sense.
conversation, and I'm like, huh? And it could be the thousandth conversation, and I'll still go, what? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you're enrolling? Like, okay, cool.
Oh,
And that's
cool.
just I don't know. It's
Yeah.
kind of weird.
I've had that a couple of times happening, and the first time that happened, it really got me like, wait, did you say? And I even went to, so is this program? Because it was like what was it, 15,000 or 20? I can't remember. Like, because it caught me at a surprise, because he basically said, "All right, sign me up." I'm like, wait, what? Did you just
Yeah,
say it? Sign me up? Yeah, but it's rare, but it does happen, and you
yeah.
got to be ready for that.
I think it's just it's like it happens to me all the time because I'm never attached to the sale. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
a yes for me, somebody say yeah I'm in or whatever, is like wow, like it's because it's I'm not attached to that,
Mhm.
and that's why it's a surprise to me all the time. And sometimes I'll know, like somebody will say, well, hey, I want to know more about Atlas, whatever. Let me talk about it. And then if they say, yeah, you know what I'm in, I'm still like, okay, cool. I kind of expected it, but I wasn't like, but it still surprises me, like, holy crap, like, they're taking this one today or whatever.
Yeah,
And I don't know.
yeah, and you know what? So what you just said too, it's the good feeling. It's the feeling of detaching.
Yeah, dude, like it's so important.
So that is the last piece in my pillar. And number 4 is to deliver and detach. Deliver and detach. And I can't tell you how many times it's so uncomfortable for a salesperson to detach.
Right, right.
It's so uncomfortable. I think because in my perspective, okay, this is what I believe is happening or has happened, is that because they're taught so much about sales objections that, remember, we become what we focus on. So they're focused on overcoming objections all the time, that they don't know anything else. And it's almost like if they don't get any objections, they still don't know what to do. They couldn't close the sale, because they're so focused on overcoming objections and coming up with all these tax insight techniques and things to do. Where I say to them, I don't teach overcoming. I don't teach that. I don't teach anything about overcoming objections, because it doesn't matter. I want you to get better at communication, not objections. And in the end, I say, okay, you gotta leave. And they look at me like, wait, what if they want to buy? Well, if they want to buy and you have like an extra 5 minutes and you're sure that the next appointment is not messing you up, like, be ready. But even if it's going to make you late to the next appointment, you got to let them know. Listen, yeah, that is great. You want to sign up? Here's what we're going to do. I have another appointment with this other person just like you. So let's do this. Can I give you a call back? Do you want to do that today, tomorrow? I mean, let it go. Like, if they say
So,
yes, they say yes.
okay, because I was thinking that the let it go is like they're not interested, don't push them anymore.
Well, at that point, you shouldn't even be pushing anything, really. I mean, if your persuasion skills are unique to you, right? No one else can be you, and you know where the conversation is leading, then surely it doesn't matter, right? Like, they say yes, they say no, it's okay. But you can't push after that. I mean, this is how I see it, Joey. If you did a great presentation, delivering your presentation based on their unique needs because you listened through the conversation. So when you present it all and you give it all, what else is there to do? I mean, you're giving them, like you do, Joey, you give them the price, you give them the total investment, the benefits, everything. Like, what is there to talk about? You are an adult, right? So there's no pushing anymore. It's leaving. Learn to leave,
That's
not
what
to
I'm saying.
push.
So like if yeah, so like that's what I wanted to ask you is like you're basically helping companies. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like you're helping
Mhm.
companies build their sales teams, correct?
Yeah.
Like in a
Yeah.
sales process
The
and
sales
all
process
the
and the
stuff we're
team. Yeah.
talking about now. Okay.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
from my mind, what you just said about leaving it on the table, like the
Hmm.
detachment,
Yeah.
without pushing. So I've given you everything. You're an adult. Like you can make a decision, and they're still humming and hawing and everything else. And you're like, okay, I gotta go, right? Instead
Yeah.
of going into more.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else like into a more manipulative, persuasive, pushing type of
Right.
thing?
Pushing
Okay,
thing. Yeah.
so let's just pretend that happens.
Hmm.
I don't know, a lot. Like out of
Yeah.
the day, it happens
Hmm.
80% of the time
Yeah.
that these people are detaching.
Hmm.
They're like, well, I got the person at this point, and then they were like, still, and they don't
Hmm.
make any sales. So
Hmm.
how does
Right.
that work in your world?
Yeah.
And how do you sell that
Yeah.
detaching piece to the team and to the owners of the? Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
Is the sales pipeline. You have to have a very precise the stages of follow up. You can't just leave it to chance, right? So there is a specific thing that everyone needs to do at any point of the conversation when you know things are just not going to get done at that in that call. You need to be prepared to schedule the next call.
So okay, so you're not really detaching. You're only detaching from that
Yeah,
one moment.
that one moment, right? So for example, this person can't make up their mind. Well, I'm not just going to hang up and go, I'll talk to you later. No. Hey, Joey, it sounds like we need to continue this conversation. Listen,
Okay,
I've got
okay.
about 5 minutes before my next call. So why don't we do this? Let's have a conversation tomorrow morning. I have available at 9 a.m. Are you open at 9? No? 12? Okay, cool. I put you in my calendar. I'll give you a quick call and we'll continue this. Is that cool with you? Boy, when you do that, when they want to make that choice, but people are people, right? They want to do it, they feel good, and they're probably thinking to themselves, I don't know, this, I don't want to get messed up again. I don't
Okay, so wait a
you know
second. Okay, there's another element you just brought in.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you're telling me that they want to do it. They're like, okay, so, but now you've only got 5 minutes left,
Mhm.
and so you can't get the thing done because they want to do it, but they have maybe a couple more questions that you don't have the time to answer. Am I right? Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
something in the way that, like, due to what we want to do
yeah.
now, there's the time frame is we don't have it, so let me call you tomorrow and we'll kind of continue the conversation, right?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
so
And
now
that's the follow-up. Yeah,
now on the other side
yeah,
is where I'm focused on for a second, just because I want to be devil's advocate here, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
I want to put the boxing gloves on.
Nice.
So now the person doesn't know. So there's 5 minutes left, and you're like, so what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I really, I think I need it, but I don't know if it's the right time. I got to speak to my wife, like whatever it is.
Right, right.
So
Yes,
do you
yes,
detach from that?
yes.
Like, what do you do at that
This
point?
the same thing. Joey, it's okay. Don't feel that you have to make a choice right now. If you got to talk to your family, please do so, because I have a family. I know how that works. My wife needs to know things. So why don't we do this? Let's set up a time tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Does it work? 12? Okay, 12 is good. And
Yes.
let's
Okay.
just catch up. Let's just catch up. I just want to hear if you have more questions. I'm sure she'll have more questions. Just let me know where you're at, and then we'll take it from there.
See, because
Same thing.
that's where, for me, the persuasion loses it for me. That's where it
Hmm.
loses. I mean, because I would be like, dude, I don't want to call. I don't want to have a conversation tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, you're now forcing me into your world. Like, you're
Right.
saying I got to go talk to my wife tonight or tomorrow morning or do to fit your schedule, right? Even if you said, hey, let's
Right.
do it next
Right.
week, and I'm like, how
Well,
do you know how
well,
my
you
week's
have
going to
to.
be, right?
Well,
So
first
that's
of
where the
all,
persuasion part like loses it for me.
okay. So here's my other punchback on that. See, you are focused on this piece of the conversation. First of all, remember, not only was there a pre-qualification before having this conversation, but I already given you a lot of value. You are still with me because you know you need what we have. And
Right.
by the way, through the presentation, I am asking, hey, is this clear? Does this make sense? Like, do you have questions? Because I want to make sure this makes sense right here. And you already know the price. And
Okay.
so in the end, there's only really one option. Is for me to leave you alone to whatever it is that you want to do. Because if I say this, if you're just telling me you need to talk to the wife, that means that I didn't do a good job through my delivery, because I did not know you were not the what do you call that? I lost track of the word. The decision maker. I did not know your wife needed to be there. That means I didn't listen. That means something along the way I
But
missed
what
it.
if But what if I didn't? What if that never came up in the conversation?
Yeah. So what if that came up, and then they I say to you, oh, you know what? It's okay. Take it easy. Go talk. We can catch up tomorrow. I mean, based on your physiology, if you're giving me the look that you're giving me right now, I'd be like, dude, we don't have to talk either, but I want to make sure that I'm there for you. So I've got a couple of I got a couple of spaces available tomorrow. Do you want to use that? You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to. But if you're giving me that look right there, it's like, hey, no problem. Look, 9 o'clock or 12, you know, right? Because see, this is where I think technology is amazing. I think the video cells, remote cells are the thing. They're always going to get better from here on. This is not going to stop. Okay. But let's just say that it's just over the phone and I'm not seeing your expression, but I can hear your tonality. I can hear you telling me, I don't know, man. I don't know. I have to talk to my wife.
Right. Right.
It sounds good, but dude, if you're doing that to me, definitely I messed it up somewhere. And all I got to say is, go talk to her. You want to just give me a call when you're ready, just do that. But if you tell me, Eddie, this is it. Actually, I want to move forward. I just got to make sure I tell my wife about this.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like we're
Right.
talking about the persuasion piece of it, right? And
Yeah.
I wanted to focus on the detachment part of whatever your framework is,
Yeah.
right? So and like I was just challenging the fact of, okay, you're now selling this to the team, like you've got a 50 guys you're selling this to and the team leader, and you're saying, okay, here's what we do. When you get to this point and they're not ready to buy, you detach. And they're like, what? I've never heard of that before. Like detaching, like, yes, detach. And so that's why I was pushing on that. Like, okay, what does detach actually mean? I get the fact that if they're, and you can feel that they're kind of ready to buy, but you don't have enough time to do the close or whatever. I get that part of it. So let's take that off the table for a second. What I'm talking about is the person who is, they're still not ready. And you can say, blame ourselves and say, well, I didn't do a great job of getting to the presentation or getting to the point where they need to make a decision. I guess we can bring that to the table. But regardless of how they got to the point of I'm not ready to buy and I need to make a decision or I need to think about it, whatever excuse, decision thing that they come up with, that they say, that's the detachment piece that I want to talk about. Because for me, it's like I don't follow up. Like, so I know this. Here's an example of this because one of my clients for the new Atlas, she said, this was brilliant. I'm glad that she brought this up because we talked in April of this year. And since that time, I don't know how many conversations we've had. Okay. Because she just bought now in September. All right. So that's the timeline, April to September. And between that, how many months?
4 months.
Okay, so 4 months of constant conversation, back and forth. Not every day, but this and that, right? And
Wait. Did you just say constant conversation within those 4 months?
yes,
You're following up.
no, I'm not. But she followed up.
Right. You still follow you. If you're not following up, that means you're basically doing this. Obviously, you're not ready back in April. And when you're ready, just come.
Yeah,
Whether she connects with you or not.
But
you
that's a
don't care,
detachment,
because-
Eddie. It's more. It was not like should I contact you next week? Should we get on a call next week or tomorrow? Do you have some time? Like there was nothing. It was like go through the first part of it, like the filters process, right? And it's like, you know what? I think this will work for you. Would you like to know more about it? Whatever. Yes. Here's the doc. Let the doc. That was it, right? And then didn't buy. And then the next time, go ahead.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So this lady, she saw the doc, and after that, she didn't say a peep.
Right.
And you didn't go and say, so did you read it?
No.
Right. That's not the right type of following up, because in your position, you already get this is where detachment, that's what I say, leave the deal at the table and leave. Learn to leave. You just left it. You put the deal at the table and you left.
Right.
But she connected with you later.
Yes.
And you responded.
Yes.
Because you knew that this could benefit her, therefore you continue the conversation.
Yes, but here's the thing. So like, I'm trying to get to the point. Like, so we're like, I don't know if there's, if detaching, what you're saying is detaching and leaving on the table is the same thing. I don't know that yet. So for me, it is, I just leave it. Like, oh, here you go. Let me know if you have any questions. Cause I'll still say that. Let me know if you have any questions or whatever. And sometimes there are questions, and I'll answer the questions, and then that. Okay, let's do it a couple different ways. One is, let's say that I give the doc, and then there's questions after. Like, okay, can you explain this? Can you explain that? I'm like, cool. In a sales, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a sales dude. In a sales situation, they would think that that's more of a hotter lead. Oh, well, they're asking more about this thing, so they're closer to the sale, right? So they push more, they'll persuade more, whatever your words you want. Yeah. I don't. I still don't. I'm like, here's the answer, done. Okay, so there's a reason I'm telling you this, so stick with me. So that's what she did. She asked, I think she did ask a couple of questions and then didn't buy. I'm like, okay, cool. And then was this April? So it was April. Was there another one? So I think it was, there was another. Yeah. Okay. So there was another time when she says, when is the next one? And I mentioned to her anyway. The long story short is that she bought in September, and then she just told me and the group, she goes, remember when we first spoke and you said that you're not going to put me into a pressure funnel or follow up things and all these things. And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, I tested you. I didn't buy in the first place because I didn't believe you, and I tested you, and you didn't do that. You didn't do anything, and you actually were true to your word, which is that's persuasion and that's influence in my mind. Because I'm true to my word, right? And I did not I did everything that I said I was going to do. Whereas if I was going to persuade somebody or whatever, or influence or sell somebody, I actually would say it. I go, okay, because if you, I don't know, it might be a crazy example. You might say, Joey, this sounds like amazing. Like what do I need to know or whatever. And then I would say, because I've been building rapport or something, and then again, anybody listening to this is not the script. This is not, it all depends on the individual conversation. So I'm just making this up as we go. But let's say you and I had an epic conversation and we get along and we're laughing with each other and we love each other on that call to the degree of like, humans that get along. And you're like, okay, dude, this sounds really great. Like, what do I need to know? And I'm like, okay, let me persuade you to get this. Like, I would actually say something like that. let, let me persuade you into doing this because I think you're epic for this. Like, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I pull the veil right off of like what's happening, but it's not a tactic, and I don't want to make it look like, if anybody just clips that one little piece out of this conversation, they're going to go, you see,
he does it.
This is what he does. He's a manipulator. He does, right? But you know what I mean? It's always an individual conversation. That's the point. But what I'm trying to get to is, because I told you that, like, I left her alone and she said, I tested you.
Yeah.
What I'm asking you is, if you have this sales team and you're saying, so let me ask you this before. My ADD is crazy. Can you tell?
I can tell.
Is detachment and leaving on the table the same thing? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So if they're the same thing, then let's say you have a sales team and you're teaching them and you're doing all this thing and you're doing your brilliance and you teach them this and they go through a whole week and all of a sudden their sales are either worse, but they're not any better. That's for sure. Because they're leaving it on the table. They're detaching. Okay. How does that go over with the team and the leader?
Yeah. So first of all, it hasn't happened. Okay. Second of all, I think
I know, because you do really well job, but I'm just, again, devil's advocate, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think if it was to happen, this is again the reason why it's required to have a good sales pipeline, the stages, what happens before and after the call, and all the follow-ups thereafter. So they need to know, and they must know what to do. So let's say if something that is, think sales are just tanking for some reason, well, the first thing that I will do is I will actually go listen to the conversation. That's my first thing, because somewhere something happened to where they're either overthinking it or they're just not able to
right. Okay. So that's,
not able to move into that position of learning to leave, right? Learning to just completely detach, leave it at the table kind of thing. That something is happening, but I need to listen to what they're saying and how they're saying it. Because fact is, if they're basically doing the persuasion thinking that if they say, oh, let's just talk tomorrow or something, and they're how can I say this? They're showing neediness, like something just kind of comes out that way, then okay, let's fix that. Because see, remember, again, it's all about the tone and the physiology. So
right.
That's important. So again, the key to that, to making that next step is, I'm going to tell you, The person who is there, who's ready to make the decision, they'll know. And in fact, it happens a lot. I don't know percentages, but let's just say a very high number of callers in those calls, they're actually just wanting to feel confident that they are the right company, the right person to work with.
Right. Right.
So that lady that she did that to you, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell these guys. Like, don't push and don't be needed or don't use tactics, because they're there to check you out. They're there to test you. They're there to see if it is what it is that they found about you, and it is what you say you are. So in that moment, learning to leave is a very professional, very, like, the strength, the positioning of the strength. I This is how here's one thing that I tell them all the time, and I have to do that often, because I tell them, don't say this out loud. Okay, don't say this to the person. Okay, I said, but say it in your head. Say it. Look, lady or guy, whatever. Look, there is many of you and only one of me. I don't have the time right now to sit here and babysit you because you can't make up your mind. I need to go. So why don't we just do this tomorrow? Because there's no way that you get to that point and you're going to hear somebody say, I'm not sure. Like, dude, really? But again, it's just based on that conversation. But again, Joey, going back to what you did, you did in fact follow up, and you did persuade the person, because I have to tell you this. If she was testing you, right, then obviously you could have failed, right? You
100%.
could have run it, right? Okay, so your technique was so good, so natural, because that's who you are, that it persuaded her to make that final choice. That's what persuasion is. Persuasion is helping the client to take that extra step into making that decision. That's what persuasion is.
Yeah.
And you did
I
it. You did it in a very
yeah.
cool way.
No, I thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's what I'm trying to get at is, like, so like what that's why we're approaching the end of the sale in a different way. Not that one is better than the other. That's for
Mhm.
sure. And I'm just curious because I'm just curious like how you would approach that if that the sales team, because let's say for example that the sales team that you're working with, the reason that it hasn't worked up to now is because they were too pushy. So then you're
Mhm.
coming in.
Or to need it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, too needy, too pushy. So you're coming in and you teach them your framework and you say, "Hey guys, la da da," and then it gets to the point where it's like, well, if they're not ready, you're going to leave it on the table. Okay, like that's something that's brand new to them. They're like, "Holy crap, what are you talking about?" And so another week or two or a month goes by, and the sales haven't even moved or done anything.
Hmm.
And so what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is the fact that you're like, okay, and let's say that they've bought into leaving it on the table.
Hmm.
They're
Yeah.
like, okay, you're telling me to do this, I'm going to do that. So now
Yeah.
there's too many of leavings on the tables, right? There's like, okay, something, right? So
Right.
what I'm hearing is that you're now going to go into the process and go, okay, guys, nothing's changing. Why? And you're like, well, you told us to leave us on the table, and the person came to this point, and I just left it. And you're like, okay. So then you're going to go in forward, like before that point, to see what's breaking here. And it could very well be a couple of points. It could be, well, they're not bringing in the right people that we're speaking to, or what does the conversation look like? So then you're helping them build the better
Mhm.
process so that when they do get to the point of someone who, so that there's less people that get to the point of saying, I'm really not sure. So they have to leave
Mhm.
it on the table. Am I anywhere close
You're
to,
you're 100% exactly there. Yes. There's so many factors to look into to just basically what you're doing right now, right? You're focusing on that one last piece of an entire 20, 30 minute
yeah,
call, which
yeah, yeah.
so there's a lot of factors in there. But yes, if it was to happen, my number one thing is to go and see and hear and watch and hear whatever that is, right? Where is what's missing and where is it? So if it's not happening in the conversation, if so for some odd reason it's an amazing conversation and it seems like this client will become the client, it's just not happening soon enough for the company, then what I'll do is I just go to the entry point. All
Yeah.
right, let's go ahead and put in this form. If you don't have $100,000, then don't show up. Right? I mean, it could be that simple. But more likely, what happens is, again, because they're getting used to something new, like anybody else, they're a little scare, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it
Yeah.
makes sense. I've had people telling me, Adrian is my favorite one, that she came to me and she was honest with me. She said, Eddie, I freaked out, so I actually did what you told me not to do. I said, it's okay. I mean, you're some days are gonna do it and some days you're not. Okay, but you just keep trying. So that I can tell you that that's usually going to be one of the key ingredients that I'm going to go and find and just tweak it a little bit.
Yeah.
And the fact is this:
Hey,
if you
Jeffrey.
have done if you have done an entire thing and you're at that point and you're having that conversation and it really sounds like things are going well, I have seen this. When someone starts to, I call it detach. Okay. So now that detach is leaving at the table. Like you're kind of moving into, you need to go to the next meeting kind of thing, right? You're going somewhere. So when it comes down to the detachment phase, many times what happens is, hey, wait. Can I get, or where can I get started? Or what's the next step? Like they are going to start asking you, where do we go from here? What's my next thing to do? And this is not the time to become the salesperson again by saying, oh, well, I can just take the credit card. No, you've got to be very genuine and professional and say, well, Joey, I'm super excited that you're getting ready to get started, right? Again, you do have a meeting, do what you can with what you have. But if you're not taking a payment right there and then, and they're saying, please take my money, you need to get better at multitasking or something,
Yeah.
you know,
But yeah.
but there are certain points that happens. And then, so the next conversation or the next text communication, Eddie, I know you told me that this price and that price, but listen, I'm ready to just go all the way in. So can I just bank wire the 25,000? I'm like, on the text, I'm like, yeah, sure. Here's the bank information, right? Those are the nice conversations, right? But it takes time, it takes practice,
Yeah.
but it all comes from a heart. If you come in as a salesperson who just likes to pitch ABC, always closing, forget about it. This is not going to work.
Yeah, and I think that like where I'm just my head's getting messed up is like the leaving it on the table piece, because I know
Hmm.
what you're saying, like you're leaving it on the table for the next call or for the next follow up, right? Whereas in
Hmm.
my world there really is no follow up, like an official follow up, right? So I'm
Yeah.
still leaving it on the table, but I'm giving all the power to them. Now that doesn't mean I never ever would reach out and say whatever is there anything else I can help you with or whatever. I don't even know what I would say, but there's no official follow up, right? And
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
our worlds are differ. Again,
Yeah.
not that one's better than the other because of
Yeah.
the people that you're working with. They're within a time frame. I
Hmm.
am not within a time frame, right? Even though I want somebody to join the cohort, it's like, okay, it's happening next a couple weeks from now. Let me know. Here's da da da. And if it doesn't happen then, it might happen 2 years from now. Just like with
Yeah.
this one person I told you, she wanted to get in April, but now she's in the September one, and I just left it. And even though there was a conversation back and forth of her asking other questions, and I would answer those questions, it was part of the persuasion piece, if you want to call it, I guess, only because I
Hmm.
just left everything to her. And that's the way I
Yeah.
do with everyone. It's like it's your choice, your decision. When you choose to become a client, whether you do or not, it's totally up to you. And when you choose to do it is up to you. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess that's the
Exactly.
biggest difference when we're talking about leaving it on the table,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Would
Yeah.
you agree?
And it is the big difference. And I think if anything, you do most of your conversations via email chat
Email, chat, yeah.
communication. So that's also another benefit of what you do. That's not There's no pressure, right? There's no
Yeah,
pressure
yeah.
because you can have multiple conversations throughout that same week. And so with someone like myself or a salesperson, we have that one-on-one face-to-face, conversation, unless it's a presentation to a group. But still, it's done right there and then. Then you've got to be actively pursuing the sale in a way that is not intrusive, right? So but in the end, you still have the same components. You are persuading people because what you're doing is you're not being manipulative. And in fact, one of the things that you just mentioned out of what your process with that individual, that lady participant of your program now, is that you you made her feel fully aware. Like you kind of got her consent without saying anything because you gave her everything. Like, this is it, here it is. So she was fully aware, and that's what persuasion should always be done. We
Yeah, I
should
think that
always do it like that.
yeah, and I agree. Like I think that the context here for each of our situations is the time. That like I have more of a time window than you do, or
Yeah,
the teams that you work with, and I
yeah,
think that everything has context, right? So what you're
yeah,
saying is more of like, can I talk to you tomorrow, or can we book something next week to continue the conversation? Where I have more luxury, I have more time, or I choose to do that because I could do the same thing, but I
yeah,
just felt that that is not what I want to do because everybody coming to me has been through that type of stuff with other
hmm,
coaches and all these, and they just don't want to be pressured whatsoever. And
yeah.
however pressure means to them. So the
Right.
more I let back and say, well, I'm just going to play within my own timeline or within
Yeah,
their timeline
yeah,
and open up a window that is whenever they decide.
yeah.
So I think that anybody listening to this is there great points on both sides, right?
Yep.
Of how
Hmm.
to persuade and help someone make a decision in a heart centered way. But
Yeah.
you also got to take the context of who we're speaking to, because I'm pretty
Yes.
sure my entire process would change if I had quotas or whatever like that. If I had to work with teams and they needed to get a
Well,
quote, right?
and as you know, I like the B2B sales. I like that. I enjoy having conversations with other individuals who know their stuff, who have a budget, who understand what it costs, time, money, investment. I like doing that because it's actually easier to leave it on the table. Like, just make the decision, and your stuff. I'm not going to come here and try to change your budget or try to convince you that I'm the best. No, let's just be real. Do you like me? Good. If not, you if you don't love what I have, if you just like it, I don't think we should work together, because you need to love what I'm about to do, because there's going to be a lot of changes happening. And if you don't love it, there's no way you're going to make those changes. But if you just like it, it's like, did you kind of like your spouse before she became your spouse, or did you really love her, like, oh my goodness, marry me, right? So that's the approach that I take. And with consumers, B2C, uh, I don't know if you deal with that a lot, but
I'm B
yeah,
two B.
me, it's,
Like
you're
I'm
B2B.
still
Okay.
yeah. I would say I'm
Okay.
B2B, man. Like they're businesses.
Okay.
They're even they're solo entrepreneurs. They're still a
They're
business.
solopreneurs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, but things like this, the techniques that we're talking about, again, it's a skill. You've got a skill. You've got a framework. I have a framework. It requires practice, and it requires your personal touch so that it can actually work. I'll leave you guys with this, if you're listening to the whole thing, or maybe you skip to the end. That persuasion, like I said, it's a skill, but it requires empathy. you know uh be real. What's the word? Authenticity. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the word, authenticity. And the if you don't remember anything else, persuasion requires active listening. If you cannot take notes and actively engage with that person by asking questions to clarify what they're saying, not your personal questions to lead them somewhere, no, just to clarify things that they're saying. If you don't have that, persuasion is just not going to work. And it's not about manipulating, it's not about tricking
No,
people. It's actually helping them do what they want to do already. You're just kind of there to build that trust and create some genuine connection so that you can actually build profitable relationships.
thanks,
That's
man.
the thing.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
Just before you go, there was something that I learned recently because I was always talking about empathy as well and being empathetic. And do you know the difference between compassion and empathy?
No, tell me.
Okay, so this may open your eyes because it did mine.
Mm.
So now I'm always about teaching people how to be compassionate.
Hmm.
And I have this conversation all the time now. The difference between the two is this. Empathy is when you feel what others feel. You know how it feels, okay?
Hmm. Like you put yourself in their position.
Yeah, you easily know what it's
Okay.
like you can feel it.
Okay.
Like I've
Yeah.
been there, I know how it feels, and that's empathy. Like I get how it
Yeah.
feels, right?
Okay.
And
Hmm.
compassion is empathy, which you know how it feels, but you also know how to fix the problem. So you can give
Hmm.
them the help. I read it in this book. I can't remember the book,
Uh-huh. Hmm.
but it was very recent. And anyway, here's how it was explained, and I totally got it, and you'll get this right away. Let's
Okay.
say that you're walking on a road, and you see somebody with a boulder on their chest, crushing them, and it's killing them, and you're like, oh, wow, I totally feel that. Like I was there. I understand that. I know how it feels. And you keep walking because you can talk to that person.
Okay.
You can say, I get you. I understand how it feels. Right? That's
No, I'm
empathy.
gonna lift the thing. I'm gonna try to lift it up.
That's compassion. You understand? That's the difference. The difference is I understand how that feels. I'm going to help you. Here, I know how to get the
So
boulder off.
compassion is I'm gonna. Oh, okay. Okay.
So that's where I'm at now. I'm like, guys, you have to have
Wow.
compassion for somebody. You still know
Wow.
how it
That's good.
feels, but you know how to help them, right? And I thought,
Mm.
and that was a huge eye opener for me because we can't just be empathetic. It's
Hmm.
like I understand how you feel, and I also know how to fix it. Here's how here's
Mm.
how I will fix it for you. And so you're in that
So
zone.
so that's showing compassion, and then empathetic is just relating,
Empathetic
understanding.
is just going, I know how you
It's
feel,
understand. Yeah, it's
and you're like,
understanding. It's letting them know that it's okay. But when
yeah. And
someone
there's
has said,
there's a place for empathy, right? It's like,
yeah, yeah,
I got you. I know how you feel.
yeah.
Whatever. But
But let
sometimes
me
in a
ask you this:
situation,
Do
sorry.
you ask? Do you? Let me ask you this: If you want to be compassionate, do you ask that person, "Do you need my help?" Or you just go and say, "Oh, I can help."
Well, no, in a sales conversation, let's say, or let's say you're on the thing that we're talking about here, it's more about compassion than it is about empathy. Because let's say somebody's coming to you for help to do whatever it is. For me, they're trying to build a business or whatever. If I just say, "Oh, I know exactly how you feel," I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on marketing and didn't go anywhere too. Yep, and that's
Mhm.
it. Like I just leave it, and they're like, can you tell me like what did you do or how did you get out of it? Like, you know what I mean? If I just leave it, I was empathetic and they feel heard. They feel, oh, you get it too. Oh, wow, that's really cool. But that doesn't help them. So if I
Ooh,
say
that's
I
good.
get it and here's how I did it or here's what I did or maybe this will help you or something like this, then I'm helping them. So I'm feeling what they feel, but then I'm also giving them the help, saying
Now,
here's how I fixed it.
now, of course, this becomes part of my presentation because that's
I
good. Because
right?
yeah, because that's where I come in. That's where I go into the environment of you got to show empathy. You got to show empathy, 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 empathy. Right
Right. So it's not
now, it's
enough.
like not enough. Wait, and I'm gonna do that boulder thing. Like,
Yeah.
dude,
I forget the
you
book, but I got to give credit where credit is due, and I'll find the book because I
okay?
just read that. I'm like, oh, it makes so
Wow.
much sense Because when you
That's
think about it,
good.
you're like, okay, I'm compassion, like, but you
Yeah.
don't really understand it. At least I
Yeah.
didn't understand it until that visual was in my head. I'm walking
Yeah.
along, I see Eddie with a boulder on his chest. I go, dude, I know exactly how you feel, and I keep walking. And you're like, well, that's great, dude, but what? Like, I'm gonna die, like, you know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But if I
Yeah.
walk by and go, dude, I know exactly how it feels. Hang on a second, take a deep breath. I'm gonna do that and push it off you or
Yeah.
whatever. Completely
Dude,
different thing.
it's
I have compassion to help you.
that's a dude. Let me tell. That's really good, man. You just opened up another can of worms for me because, no, no, seriously, like that's in the Bible, man. That story that it's basically the guy is on the road and he needs clothes and he's been robbed and he's hurt and this guy passes by and he's like, oh, don't even bother. They don't even look. Oh, the guy comes by and they're looking, but they're like, okay, whatever. Like they probably left a couple of coins there, because they thought, what, he's there for a reason, right? And then that third guy shows up and he shows compassion because he actually picked him up, took him to the inn, bought him the
See?
room, and even left the innkeeper with a bunch of money and said, hey, take care of whatever that person needs. And if it's not enough, when I return, I'll pay the rest. Bam! Compassion.
Yeah, there's a difference because if that person
Wow.
knew, if they were homeless or whatever, or on the street as a
Yeah.
beggar or something like that, they understand how it feels, but they're like, let me help you, like pick you up. I'm going to pay for the inn, like
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So that's compassion. That's a completely different
Yeah,
story.
man.
And that's where sales comes in is like if you're
Yeah.
not, and this is why, I know that we're at time here and I don't want to keep you forever because I know you have a family too. But this is the thing that I am so passionate about, which is
Yeah.
another side of compassion, but passionate about is teaching my clients is that if you don't care enough about your clients, nothing's going to really help you. They'll feel that energy that is like, look, just give me the money and just let's get on with this. Whereas if you get to the empathy part, that's fantastic. But now you have compassion for them, which means that you're doing everything in your power to help them.
Yeah.
And if you get to that level, if you're truly about just the person, I think the compassion automatically shows up.
It does. Yeah, it does. And that
So
is
there you go.
why that's why I'm going to use it now. Because I've been say I think I've said the message is out there. I just have not, like what you just did with me. I have not solidified that whole message into this boulder because I usually say you have to know your stuff, or I say, hey, you're gonna have to love what you sell. Like you have to believe in it. Well, believing in something that you sell requires the ability to go through that emotional whatever is attaching to you because you went through something happened, you had a problem, and you believe in this product that fixed it. So when
Yeah,
you show up,
that's another conversation that we can have, Eddie,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's why it's hard for me to believe that someone can sell something who has not gone through the same thing.
yeah, and they're just
It's
going through
hard.
the steps of
Yeah.
empathy, right? Empathetic, but that doesn't matter because they
Well,
don't
how
care. They
can they
just
be
want that.
empathetic if they don't
They
feel it?
can't.
That's the
Yeah,
point, right?
that's the
So
point.
you can
Yeah,
say to somebody,
yeah,
I'm not dissing you. I'm just saying
yeah,
generally,
yeah, yeah,
like we can
yeah.
say, well, you got to be empathetic, and they're like, okay, I'll be empathetic. Look, you
Right.
can't be empathetic unless you know what it feels like to have the frickin' boulder on your chest.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then once you've
Yeah.
done that, you're like, hang on a minute, I got it off my chest. I'm going to show you how to. Let me help you.
Let me help
That's
you. Yeah.
compassion, and that the compassion piece is the product. Like, okay, let me do it. This is how we've done it. This is how we help you. Blah blah blah. But yeah, you could be a super salesperson and all this other kind of stuff. But if you're just selling because you're good at selling or whatever it is, and you have no empathy, it's impossible
It's
to have
impossible.
empathy unless you've been through it.
Or you just suck at sales. Or actually, wait, you're just leading so many people into buying what you don't even believe in,
Yeah,
and then you
it's
move
because
on to something
you don't know what
else.
it's like,
Yeah, and you
right?
just keep going and going and coming back. Like people know who you are like that.
You know, when I
So
talk about an atlas, when I talk about the oasis, like,
yeah,
you're selling the oasis, like the dream
yeah,
island, right?
yeah,
The whole point of that is you're already there. You
yeah, yeah,
already
yeah.
know what it feels like to be in
Right,
bliss and to be in the
right.
dream island, and everything's fantastic. Your clients don't know that. Your dream clients don't know how it feels. They can
Yeah,
think they know. You can paint the picture. You could talk about it like, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's what I want. But they have no idea how it feels. And that's different. That's a whole other discussion. We're going into too many rabbit holes, but that's a whole
Yeah.
other discussion,
Yeah, it is.
right?
It
Because
is.
I know that comes into sales as well. They're like, let's paint
It does.
the picture. Let's do this.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
and then I know I was there too, because as a copywriter and all this, I'm like, okay, I'm going to paint the future for them. But it's impossible for them to feel that. No matter how many words, like feel good words or emotional words that you want to use to paint the picture of the future, it's impossible for them to feel it.
To feel it. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can think they feel it, but they don't feel it. And it's the same as empathy and compassion. Anyway, like so many things blew up in this
So-
last,
So to remind everybody with the persuasion, how about this? This is it right here. So remember this: that persuasion is also a two-way street. So it's not just about getting people to do what you want, but it's also understanding their needs and finding a mutual benefit so that
I
it
love
can
it.
produce a profitable relationship, right? So yes. And we're
Love
gonna
it,
have to
Eddie.
talk about that compassion thing, dude. All right. Awesome, man.
Thank you.
Dude, thank you. No, thank you so much. I appreciate you, Joey. That was good. And thanks for that boulder. I'm gonna use
Back
it.
at you, my friend. Thank you for being here, by the way. Hashtag live, hashtag replay. I didn't say a lot of that through the conversation. But if you're watching us on the replay now, hashtag replay, that would be amazing. And we will see you next Tuesday for another amazing conversation here on Heart Centered Marketing. Have an amazing night.